Michelin wiper blades.
Today's opening tip, Kristaps Porzingis, not used to being a visitor at Madison Square Garden, so both at halftime and at the end of last night's game, KP tried to walk toward the home team's locker room before he changed course. I don't know how this happens twice, Perk.
It's just he got so much going on through his mind right now. You dealing with so much at this time. I got to give him a pass.
It could have been worse. He could have made it all the way down to the locker room.
Oh, man, he was just so confused. God bless his heart.
I mean, it was a big night all the way around. Welcome to The Jump. I am Rachel Nichols. Today I'm joined by our insider host of the Hoop Collective podcast, Mr. Brian Windhorst. And look over there, it's NBA champion, graduate of Cass University, Mr. Kendrick Perkins. Coming up, Paul George and the Clippers didn't pick up a win last night, but what you do need to know about his debut, we will have for you. Stay tuned for that. First, though, so it has not been a happy time for the Portland Trail Blazers. The team that last year made it to the Western Conference Finals basically fell off a cliff to start this season, thanks to a devastating rash of injuries that in turn exacerbated some gambles made by management over the summer. Damian Lillard has basically had to become a superhero just to keep Portland afloat. Before the Blazers' most recent loss, he was averaging 33 a game, second in the league behind only James Harden. But as we know in the NBA, there's kryptonite for that. Opponents started doubling, tripling, even boxing one-ing Lillard. And a couple nights ago, it finally broke him, friends. He was held to just 9 points, snapping a streak of 230 games in which he'd scored in double figures. Speculation swirled that a trade was in the works, but with league rules keeping a big chunk of players off limits to be dealt until mid-December, the Blazers decided to do something even more drastic. Yep, hit the intro, guys.
It's time!
Oh, yes. Enter one, Mr. Carmelo Anthony. Last night, our Adrian Wojnarowski broke the news that Melo was heading to Portland on a non-guaranteed deal. News that was somehow simultaneously a shock and a long time coming. The Blazers had chased Melo before. Remember 2 years ago when Melo was trying to get out of New York? And CJ McCollum posted a Photoshop of Anthony on his IG to say how good Melo would look in a Blazers uniform. He did a pretty good job there, I think, actually. Except Melo didn't want to come then. And he didn't come the summer after that either, reportedly in part because he felt like playing in the Pacific Northwest would put him too far away from his family. By the start of this season, it seemed like the whole thing was a dead end. Here was Dame on the Joe Budden podcast in September.
See, look, 2 years ago, I tried to get Melo to come to Portland. Mm-hmm. And he went to Oklahoma City. Then after that, I tried to get him to come to Portland again, and he went to Houston. So at this point,
you're not putting your hand out again.
The team or me, I'm like, he ain't coming here.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
He
deserved to be in the league, but like, he ain't coming here.
Given all of that, I reached out to Lillard this morning to take his temperature on Melo joining the team now. Here's what he told me. I believe he can help us. Obviously, I'd like to see our early season struggles turn around, and hopefully we can be a part of a great bounce back for Melo as well. Which is really the crux of it, right? Neither side here necessarily planned for this, and we don't know exactly what it's going to be. I don't think anyone is expecting Melo at age 35 to come in and dominate, and there are still legit concerns about his defense. Take a look at how things went for the Rockets defensively. This is with Melo on and off the floor. Those numbers are not good, but also there's a chance that Melo can be enough of a spark plug offensively that the Blazers could make it work. Here are his numbers the last couple years since he left New York offensively. Portland could certainly use some of that, as well as just someone with some veteran savvy. In 12 games so far this season, the Blazers have already tried giving 4 different guys the start at power forward. The most recent was a 19-year-old rookie, and it didn't go well. Bottom line, this experiment certainly seems worth a try. And personally, I expect Melo to be a gracious team player for as long as it lasts. And yeah, I can hear some of you right now chuckling out there as I say that, but I promise you, this is a man who loves the game of basketball, who has spent more than a year in a purgatory he never expected, and who is going to appreciate the chance to end his career, if not exactly on his own terms, at least getting to actually end it, as opposed to just watching it waft away. As a 10-time Olympic star, 3-time Olympic gold medalist, former NBA scoring champion, and NCAA champion, he deserves that. And my God, Lillard deserves some more help. Even superheroes need super friends. And now we get to see just how much Melo has left in his cape. Perk, what do you think of this fit with the Blazers?
I love it. This is two situations where Portland needs Melo and Melo needs Portland. And I'm happy for Melo, and I'm happy that he has this opportunity. And I think he's going to come in and help them. I think he's going to. Now it went from Melo being a role player on somebody's team to now he possibly could be the second option, because C.J. McCollum haven't had the best year, this season. And I'm looking at this situation. We could be looking at a Dwight Howard with the Lakers type thing with Melo. And like you said earlier, Melo, he's been, out of basketball for a year and been wanting to be back in the game. He's not going to take this situation for granted. And let's not to mention, this guy's a future Hall of Famer, and he's a walking bucket. He still could get bucket. I don't care what anybody say about him not playing defense. Melo could still score the ball.
I mean, look, by the way, C.J. McCollum is going to round into form. I'm taking the history on C.J. McCollum over the last 3 weeks.
I love C.J.
But to your point, Dwight Howard has been in a reserve role, and maybe that's what we can see from Melo.
I really, really hope Perk is right, but I'm afraid he's wrong. Last year in Charlotte at All-Star Weekend, I believe you were there. They were having a dinner for Dwayne Wade.
I was there.
And Melo basically gave a toast to Dwayne's career, and he was talking about the ability to, how everyone respects him and the way he can go out on his terms. And I was heartbroken because obviously he was honoring Dwayne, but he was talking about himself. And I felt for him in that moment, what he was going through. He was really revealing his struggle. Even though it's not what he was talking about, you could tell. And so I regretted that it ended the way it did. So I'm happy he gets this, and I wanted to go. Perk, he was so bad on defense in Oklahoma City that they just couldn't have him back. And last year, as soon as the Rockets, moved off of him, their defense started to improve. I just don't think he is able to be good enough offensively to overcome his defensive shortcomings. And what I'm hoping for, you showed that graphic with all those deficiencies they have at the power forward. I'm hoping that he just helps them enough. But I'm really, my heart says he wants to work, but my head says it's not gonna.
I mean, doesn't it depend, too, on the defensive style? Houston is so switch-heavy.
Sure, but in this particular day and age, once there's a weak link on the court, you hunt that man out and punish him. And maybe not in the second quarter, but when it matters. And so I hope Perk is right. I hope it does turn into a Dwight Howard situation. But I was really discouraged by what happened last year. And there's a reason why nobody wanted him.
But I do think also, when we talk about locker room, I've had this conversation with people over the last year that he's been out of the game. And I always say, he could really help young players in a locker room. And I am sometimes met, Perk, with people being kind of skeptical, being like, he's selfish, or he has a bad attitude. That is not how other players see him.
Not
correct?
at all. And the thing is, it only takes one guy or one GM to put that target or that on your back, and then it just sticks around the league without you really knowing the guy. And every time I met Melo or talked with Melo, he's been great. Anybody that I talked to, from Russ to whoever that then played with him, J.R. Smith, Iman Shumpert, they said that he's one of the best teammates that he ever had. Now, the problem that Melo had was he had a problem with accepting a lesser role. And, I mean, it's human nature. You go from being the guy. The same thing Allen Iverson went through. The only guy that I've seen do it and his career is still going, you look at a guy like Vince Carter. But I think what Melo went through for the last year and a half is very humbling. And I think he's going to come out with the right mindset. He's going to be all in, and I think he has something to prove. And like you said, B, yes, everybody been on him how awful he's been on defense. And the same thing, we criticized LeBron last year that he's taking a step back. These guys listen to this. These guys want to show the world. So I wouldn't be surprised if he comes out with a defensive mindset and a chip on his shoulder to prove everybody wrong. And like I said, he's still a walking bucket, and I still can see that. I still see Carmelo coming in and contributing 15 to 16 points to this Portland team that's needed right now.
And look, you mentioned Vince Carter. He did watch in real time Dwayne Wade go through a mini version of this, right? Dwayne Wade goes to Cleveland.
Right.
There's some controversy over who's going to start. J.R. Smith gets kind of bent out of joint because Dwayne ends up starting. And then after, 10 games, it was sort of like, actually, you know what? Dwayne really is ready at this moment to move into a reserve role. Dwayne
game.
realized that, became ready, and then moved. And then obviously when he took the 1 year with Miami, it was in a way that, frankly, when he left Miami, he never would have expected.
Right.
And Carmelo watched Dwayne go through that, and by accepting it, got this fantastic, fabulous last year, right? This retirement tour. And to your point, Brian, he talked about that in that dinner, and it did seem like he wanted a little bit of that for him. And he deserves it. Again,
Yes.
surefire Hall of Famer,
Yes,
10-time
for sure.
All-Star,
For sure.
All-NBA over and over and over again, 3-time Olympic gold medalist. This is a guy we want in our game, and we want him to have a proper send-off, and hopefully he can help the Blazers a little bit as well. Let's talk about Paul George. Made his Clippers debut last night. Really effective. Man, just so fun to watch him score the basketball again.
Yes.
Dropped 33 points in just 24 minutes of action against the Pelicans. Well, not as strong on defense. The Clippers lost. Kawhi didn't play. But, Perk, what were your takeaways from PG's debut?
I was very impressed. Although we all know that when you play against the Pelicans, you could go for your career night because they suck on the defensive end. No, they do, though. It's the truth, Rachel. I mean, I'm sorry, it's facts. But I was impressed with PG. I mean, when you sit out this long away from the game of basketball, it takes time. And for him to come in last night and put on this type of performance, I was very impressed. You know what this spoke values? You know what this told me last night? It says that while he was hurt, he worked his tail off. That means he stayed in the lab. That means he was making sure he was getting his shots up, working on the court with his coaches, and he put in the work and it paid off. I was very impressed by this performance last night.
Yeah, he was out of sorts defensively. He was not quite in the rotations. He was a little on his heels a little bit defensively. And, you know, he hasn't been working with the starters in practice. Doc didn't want to do that because he didn't want to set him back, which was interesting. But I think that is going to contribute to a slower start. The Clippers do have a weakness that I've seen over the first couple of weeks, and that is offensively they don't have creators. They've been really relying on Kawhi and Lou Williams. You look down their roster, they have offensive specialists. They don't have creators. So getting Paul George back and getting Paul George, who was the dynamic shooter that he was last year in Oklahoma City, which he definitely showed out of the gates last night, that is very exciting. I know Paul George will come around defensively. I was very encouraged. And could he have played before last night? Probably.
Right.
They had the luxury of going slow because they know what kind of team they have, and I think that going slow will pay off as he goes into this transition.
You have to remember that he had both shoulders like hanging by a thread for the last few months of last season and played through all of that.
All of that.
So he hasn't really been right or been himself in months. We saw it with the MVP race. He was cooking and then just basically dropped off when he had the shoulder issues. So it's going to take a little time to get back to it, but 33 points is a nice way to work yourself back in. Congratulations to Paul. I know it's been a long road. Coming up, we're going to talk about Trae Young because he executed yet another crafty nutmeg last night. Fellas, I want to know if he should start getting assists for these plays. Can you assist yourself on something like that? We will discuss it in Make or Mix next. But first, it is time for our distant replay, brought to you by the U.S. Postal Service. This date in 2002, featuring Stephon Marbury.
Oh, he's got a switch.
Steph.
Oh, no. Listen. What's the owl supposed to do?
Right?
What's he supposed to do?
Not guard him.
I probably can't defend
Okay, but yeah, and by the way, just that visual, if you could take the still photo of Stephon as he's bending down, right, to make the move, and the owl's up tall, that's a great image.